Hello and welcome to the About to Interview podcast. I'm your host, that guy named John. This is a supplemental version of the About to Review podcast, which drops every Wednesday and covers movies, TV shows, film festivals, and more. You can follow the podcast on all forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at About to Review, and make sure to subscribe on iTunes/Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Blueberry, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. This show focuses solely on the conversations that I have with authors, directors, actors, and creators, and is available on YouTube as well as subscribing to the podcast. Make sure to click the subscribe button below, give a thumbs up, and check out the full show notes with links to the guests at abouttoreview.com.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
In the promotional artwork for Season 2 and also in the opening title sequence of Luke Cage, he is carrying Harlem on his back and on his skin. And I wanted to ask you, who do you carry with you? Who drives you forward in your creative process?
Well, I don't carry anybody on my back. I'm a running back with blocks that, basically, because everything for me is football.
Mm-hmm.
So in the writer's room in particular, dialogue is offense, structure is defense. And together we come up with the plays that, our quarterback, Mike Coulter, is going to execute for the rest of the team. And, myself as head coach is just really navigating all these elements, and but occasionally calling audible. So for me, it's really the support is everywhere. From the writers' room, it's all the writers, whether it's myself, talking Season 2 in particular, myself, Ida Kroll, Kayla Cooper, Ian Stokes, Nicole Morante Matthews, Nathan Jackson, Matt Owens, and Matthew Lopes. As the nucleus writing, producing staff. And, there was a lot of crossover because a lot of the names that I just mentioned also were the same writers on Season 1,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of a few others, because Charles, Jason, and Christian left the show, to run their own shows. Because Jason went on to run House of Cards, as well as Berlin. He's running Berlin Station right now. Charles went into an overall deal. Although, off record, he's back if we end up getting a Season 3.
Right.
And Christian also is doing other things. But the thing is that we had very little turnover. And it's funny how people say, people that like the season say, well, man, it just seems like you have new writers. No, it's just us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we just have a different, not mandate, but we just have a different confidence in the way that we told this story this season. But then again, it's also also everything. It's just we have incredible support from, or at least I have incredible support from within Marvel and also at Netflix. In addition to Gail Behringer, our producer, and the crew. And, the thing is that, and then of course, I can't even go without mentioning Adrian Young and Ali Sheed Muhammad,
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Hilfer and, Susan Kent and Michael Brake, the kind of music nucleus, which of course is to me, the music side is an equal partner to our writers. And then, of course, the actors. The thing is, this is a different kind of show where, the actors have heavy say in what we do. Because, the way that I view show running is you either are a Phil Spector type showrunner or you're like Quincy Jones. I'm more of the Quincy Jones school. The Phil Spector school is, these are the songs I'm writing. It's my way or the highway. You're just a simple voice, a mixed symphony of sound that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. So the singers become disposable, whether it's Ronnie Spector or Tina Turner doing River Deep Mountain High, whatever it is. The star of the show is Phil Spector. I'm not that kind of showrunner. I'm more like Quincy Jones, because the reason that Quincy Jones could work with Leslie Gore and Frank Sinatra and Count Basie and Ray Charles and Michael Jackson and all these other people successfully was that he tailored the music of his songs around the singer. And so whether it's Mike Coulter, whether it's Alfred Woodard, whether it's Simone Missick, there's back and forth, and we tailor, the show around them in a way that's bespoke, and is definitely a collaboration. Rather than a dictatorship, just to be perfectly honest. And now it doesn't mean story-wise that that I'm a cream puff. That I'm going to do any and everything that they say, but they know and they do. And when we get on the phone and we talk, if I'm not on set, they're like, okay, let's talk about this. And there's trust between us because of just how well season 1 and season 2 have come out. It's like they trust me and I trust them.
Mm-hmm. And that was something so at the recent Ace Comic Con, here in Seattle, I of course was there for your panel. We met beforehand for a little bit, and you talked about one of those things where not being always on set. You miss some of those moments. And so one moment that you talked about was the kind of quintessential moment from season 1 with Mahershala Ali, walking towards the camera and with the Biggie print behind him with the crown.
Right.
So in moments like that, where you see that, maybe in the dailies or however you guys structure that, since you cannot always be on set, how are those moments kind of created when you do get those and you get to see them? Then how kind of, do you structure your feedback to the crew who is there on set?
Well, the thing is that, we have every writer that I mentioned, in the writer's room also produces, meaning that they go on set for their episodes. And I kind of view myself more as the editor-in-chief of Luke Cage.
Okay.
If Luke Cage was run like a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So there are going to be times, in the scripts where, like I'm not heavy-handed, but that, I collaborate whether my name's on it or not on the scripts. But the producers fully own their episodes when they go on set, in terms of they're producing the episodes. They're there to answer the actor's questions. I don't micromanage in that way, because
mm-hmm.
you just can't. You have to trust your collaborators. Or what I always say is, if you're going to take a chance, take it, but you better be right.
Right. Well, that's something that
and that's not me being arrogant, but it basically is letting them know, okay, think about it before you do it, but
mm-hmm.
I'm going to trust you, because if I didn't trust you, you wouldn't be out there in the first place. Because what you don't want to do is paralyze production by them being worried about what you're going to like, what you're not going to like.
Absolutely.
And between, Marvel, who's very hands-on, there are always a lot of people there, but, ultimately, we try to keep things really simple and simplified, so that the actors feel free to stretch, but then at the same time, know that we care, and that, and that we're there for input.
Mm-hmm. And tying into some of your vast musical background, you were in the music, journalism industry for a long time. And the way that albums were structured when we were growing up, because both of us, 90s hip hop, is our bread and butter. And, you had the A side and the B side, where the A side had all of the radio hits, the big things. And the B side was where people could get, a little bit more experimental and do some different things. How would you relate that to season 1 of Luke Cage versus season 2?
Well, one of the best sequence albums of all time is Public Enemy's Takes Nations and Millions to Hold Us Back.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that's equally incredibly sequenced is, Ice Cube's Death Certificate. And they were different back in the day if you owned the cassette, because there was an actual place on the record where they flipped, and then you flipped on the second side. And it's no different in terms of watching a television show where after episode 7 or 8, there's a dramatic climax that pushes you into the second side of the season.
Right.
And so it's kind of sequenced and reflected like that. Like, Public Enemy's, takes Nation Mill and holds it back. Builds and builds and builds until finally, you flip over B side. Freedom was a road seldom traveled by the multitude. And then boom, Public Enemy #1. So what you got? And then it's like the whole feel of the record changes and goes in a different direction, because the second side is the side that has Rebel Without a Pause. It's the second side that has She Watched Channel Zero. But the first side had Bring the Noise. The first side had, Don't Believe the Hype, and it's the balance. The B side is the side that has Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos. So you just want to make sure that as you get deeper into this album, that you still have deep records to go, so that you don't run out of steam, before the very end.
And that was something else that you brought up on your panel, is that you really wanted to structure both season 1 and season 2 like an album. Because, when you used to pick up an album, and probably still, today, but especially back in the day when that was the main way you got it, is you would get the record, play the whole thing from beginning to end, then play it again from beginning to end. And that is how people are getting their shows nowadays. Like Netflix, on Friday, 13 episodes dropped, and people could just get all of it right there. And so, yeah, I mean, you said that you structured it kind of like almost a double album.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you want things to have a feel. Like, Sign of the Times is a big influence on my sequencing. 1999, which also was literally a double album, because people will forget what it was like to have an actual double album where you had actual vinyl that you would put out, flip it twice. So that's what I remember as a kid, and we basically are trying the same thing with this show. And, there are going to be critics, there are going to be the Alan Sepulveds of the world that just don't understand it, and that are going to be vocally against it. And to them, I just basically just think about the fact that, there are going to be those people that just, want things to be, Twisted Shout and She Loves Me and Michelle My Belle, as opposed to, getting into the deeper stretches of like the White Album or Abbey Road or, something else, or like that album rock is probably lost on them. I mean, they probably don't like the Beatles. Don't like the Eagles or don't like Zeppelin because of the fact that those songs like meander. I mean, it takes a moment for Hotel California to get wound up. It takes a moment for Stairway to Heaven or Moby Dick to, go places. So, but if you're into that shit, it's great,
Yeah, and then you have, the other ones like Anagata Davida with a 12-minute drum track, and you're like, okay, we could probably wrap this up here in a little bit.
I mean, yeah, it just depends. I mean, but for me, it's like sometimes, I one of my favorite records is, the Rolling Stones song, Can't You Hear Me Knocking?
Okay.
Because that song just extends forever. Like you've got the whole song, and then all of a sudden it just kind of descends almost into this like rock jazz thing that just keeps going, and Scorsese is really good about using moments like that in his movies, because he has a whole sequence set to the extended version of that in Casino.
Oh, right.
Like, what I also loved was, like, perfect example was, like, I didn't realize that, like, he basically split Layla in two and used the second half of Layla in Goodfellas. Because you listen to the song Layla, you have the whole head of the song, Layla, she got me on my knees, the whole song, right? And then you get to that whole piano part, and then when you hear the piano part, like, oh, yeah, this is Goodfellas. Because you didn't realize that this long ass song had two parts, and that he basically split it up,
That is awesome. So one of the kind of the last questions is, I've been kind of not obsessed, but really fascinated with kind of failures, these days. And you talked about an interesting way, an interesting quote that you said was smart people learn from their own mistakes. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others. So from season 1 to season 2, kind of what were those things that both you learned from your own mistakes and the people around you?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, killing off Cottonmouth was not a mistake. That was deliberate.
Okay.
And it's something I stand by, you know. Even though it pissed people off, and even though people are like, the show, like, that's 7 episodes, but, like, you know, Mahershala wouldn't have taken the role if we didn't give him an out, because he didn't want to tie himself to a series regular role. He
Interesting.
didn't, you know, particularly after his relationship on House of Cards, where he felt after a while that his character was underused, and it was after a while, because Remy started off being a very major part of the ensemble. After a while, they ran out of story, but he was still stuck up to the show. And so when he just got free of House of Cards, the last thing he wanted to do was link himself to another series, particularly a new series that he didn't really know what it was going to be, other than that he liked the first 2 episodes, because those were the only 2 scripts that were done at the time.
Oh, gotcha.
You know, so that's the thing. It's like, people are like, oh, yeah, see, you didn't know Mahershala was going to shine, so that's why you killed him off, because you didn't know, man. You didn't know, son. I'm like, no, I knew. But it's just like, but he wouldn't take the role otherwise. So come on. You know? So, you know, there's no regrets with that. I think if there's regrets, honestly, it's that I wish that we hadn't of gotten caught up in the practicality of being grounded. Because having to have somebody wear a super suit to fight your superhero makes it stilted automatically. It doesn't matter the quality of the scripts. It doesn't matter the quality of the acting, because I think that Eric Lloyd Harvey is an excellent actor. And I think that he really did do the best that we gave to him. But, you know, people just got so caught up in the suit that they, you know, and hating Diamondback because he wasn't Cottonmouth, that they lost everything else.
Interesting.
You know? And it's really unfair. And I'm hoping that in time, when people, you know, particularly after the end of having watched season 2, that they go all the way back to season 1 just to watch how the show has evolved.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that definitely, you know, makes sense. And those are very valid things, where the practicality of it, especially with the Netflix Marvel shows, is on a totally different scale than the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
Yeah, and then to kind of wrap it up, one other kind of thing that I thought was pretty incredible is that you said, you know, perfection is the enemy of good. And sometimes you just need to just grind and just get stuff done. And you talked about just the writing process, you know, for this, and how you even correlated it to a Wolverine metaphor in the first movie, where Rogue asked him, you know, does it hurt every time? And he said, every time. You know, and so I really appreciated your kind of approach to that, because people, you know, look at you and some of the other showrunners in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they're just like, oh, that must be, you know, the dream. It is still work. It is still, you know, a job that you love. But like you said, perfection is the enemy of good. Sometimes you just got to just grind and just get it done.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing because, you know, at the gestation stage, you just got to get the baby out of the womb.
Right.
But then once the baby's out, I mean, of course, you know, you can do a better job of raising it from the outside and teaching how to walk and everything else. But you really just have to make sure that the baby is healthy, you know, until it can be born. Although everybody wants the baby to be born, but you know, you got to prevent people's impatience from the baby being born prematurely. That's really the hardest part. Is people are like, oh, I'm so sick and tired. Let's get it over with already. You're big enough, right? Let's go. And you're like, no, we're not cutting the baby out early. You know, like let it get healthy enough so that when it comes out, it can remain healthy. It's really the biggest thing.
And with the timing,
people get impatient, and your job as the OBGYN of the story is to be like, go wait in the waiting room. Shut the fuck up.
Right. Now, do you think that with this season 2 that patience was there? You know, that you felt that this story came out at the right time?
Oh, hell no. They're always impatient.
Okay.
And they still are. But you know, it's just after a while, it's just you get the experience to say, like, you know what? You can be as angry as you want, but it's not going to make it better, and all you care about is the result. So, like, let's go for the best result, not the process. And you figure it out.
Yeah, and this season was very different, than season 1. I mean, you go to different places in New York. You introduce different cultures and tones, and of course, the musicality, of the show, is so different. But at the same time, it still feels real. It still feels connected to season 1, which is a huge credit.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know that you. Go ahead.
We just go for what we know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you.
Go for the best.
Yeah. So thank you again, just for taking the time. Both for Ace Comic Con. I mean, you had a great panel and just talked about, just your music background, which is so deep. That I highly encourage people to just go look up some of your stuff, because you're one of the first to write about Wu-Tang, one of the first to interview Biggie, one of the last to interview Biggie. Like, you have been in this game for a long time, and that really bleeds through to your other projects, and it is pretty incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I have been talking with Cheo Coker, the showrunner of Marvel's Luke Cage. You can binge all of the episodes right now. The soundtrack is available, I think, right now, right?
Yeah, no, the soundtrack is out. Also the soundtrack and score are the same thing. They're both out. Mm-hmm. Adrian Young and Ali G. Muhammad's The Midnight Hour, is also in stores. And even though their album is separate from the show, it's an extension of the sound that they created for the show. Mm-hmm. Listening to that album, which is so incredible, made me realize that ultimately, the show is the sound of The Midnight Hour, their band. And it's an amazing record. And so I really recommend highly that if you're going to buy this Luke Cage soundtrack, that you also buy, the Midnight Hours album as well, because it just extends the groove even more.
Fantastic. I will put both of those links in the show notes below, and that definitely will give somebody a lot of new music, considering your soundtrack for season 2 is 55 tracks.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing. Mixing the show is, we mixed 13 albums.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it is crazy.
So that is fantastic. So, and yeah, all of the links to both Cheo and the show will be in the show notes below. So thank you again so much, Cheo.
Thank you so much.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.